When does silence become a participation or a participation certificate? Yes, I'm talking about the cost of silence today on Copy and Conversation with my Mira. In this series, 21 days, 21 stories from Mahabharata. And you guessed it right. Yes, I'm going to be talking about Bhishma, Bhishmacharya, a character many of us know how powerful. Yes, there is a silence that heals. There is a silence that listens. There is a silence that allows another person to finish speaking. But there is another kind of silence. I'm sure you know what I'm going to be talking about, but still inviting you to stay there. The silence that slowly begins to decide the future, the silence that watches us, the silence that knows something beyond truth and something beyond that you can think or that you could speak. But as I welcome you to Copy and Conversation, we aren't asking whether speaking is easy. We are asking a more uncomfortable question. When does silence stop being peace and start becoming a participatory participation certificate? Yes, you know what participation certificates usually stand for. It's good to know that you took part in that event, but you were rather aiming for first five positions, and you get a participation certificate which you feel like holding it or just leaving it, right? Mahabharata introduces us to one of its most respected characters, yes, Bhishmacharya, a warrior, a statesman, a teacher, someone whose wisdom was admired by kings and people. Many kings used to get scared of him too. People trusted him. Generations looked up to him. If someone had asked, who will always protect righteousness? Many would probably have answered Bhishma, right? There comes a moment in Mahabharata that still makes many of us pause. The royal court. Everyone assembled the kings, the princes, the teachers, the warriors, the elders, the cousins, the relatives, the all. A woman stands there after being humiliated. She asks a question. Not once, not twice, again and again and again and again. She isn't asking for sympathy. She is asking for justice. She is asking whether anyone in that room will stand up. Many powerful people were present. Bhishma was one among them. He knew what dignity meant. He knew that honor meant and what honor meant. He also knew right from wrong. Yet he remained silent. Not because he didn't know, not because he approved, but he was bound, bound by loyalty, bound by his oath, bound by the throne he had promised to protect, right? Perhaps bound by the belief that someone else would intervene. But history rarely remembers what we intended. History remembers what happened. Do you want me to say that again? Here you go. History rarely remembers what we intend or what we intended. History remembers what happened. That's why we keep talking about the history again and again. As I just paused, I'm just wondering, did Bhishma return to his room that night and replay the moment? Did he tell himself, I should have, I could have, I could not? Or did another voice whisper, much louder, you should have, Bhishma? We may never know that if this is the real question, but for sure, just imagining he might have asked this to himself or his conscience. Because Bhishma isn't only a character, he's also a possibility within us. Yes, in you, of course, and me too. Not the warrior, not the grandfather, but the silent witness. Today's story, imagine a workplace, right? Someone is repeatedly interrupted, ideas are dismissed, or it gets scattered. Credit quietly shifts to someone else. Everyone notices. Nobody says even anything. Later, people discuss it over a coffee. They know, they agree, they sympathize. But when the next meeting begins, the silence returns. Or imagine a family a child constantly hears, "You're never good enough." Yeah, we might have said that, right? And we heard that too. "You're not good enough." Or "You were never good enough." The relatives hear it, the grandparents hear it, people around hear it, the neighbors hear it, the friends hear it. Hear it. Everyone exchanges uncomfortable looks, but nobody speaks. Nobody speaks. Years later, people wonder why the child grew up believing they weren't enough at all. Perhaps it's a group of friends and one person is constantly mocked. Everyone laughs, not because the joke is funny, but because nobody wants to become the next joke. है ना? So, laughter becomes silence, wearing a different face. Notice something. Very few people actually wanted harm. Most simply didn't interrupt it. Everyone want peace, but when they see some harm happening, how many of us, or how many times have you seen somebody interrupting? With a twist, I want to share one more thing. We often think silence means doing nothing, but doing nothing still changes the outcome. Imagine rain falling into a field and somebody says, "I won't plant anything." Weeks later, it's not the plant, it's the weeds that grow over there. Not because anyone planted weeds, but because empty space is never truly empty. We think, the empty field is empty. But keep watching. After a couple of months, you will see the weeds spread all over. Silence. Absolutely. Silence behaves similarly. If kindness doesn't will this, kindness doesn't fill that particular space, or to ask doesn't fill that particular space, something else usually will grow over there. Another thought in my mind, most people don't remain silent because they are cruel. Sometimes they are afraid of losing approval, afraid of getting into a conflict, afraid of being misunderstood, afraid of standing alone, and slowly fear begins wearing the clothes of wisdom. Yes, we call it diplomacy. Timing, practicality, experience. Sometimes those are true. Sometimes, yeah. They're simply safer. They're just the safer names for hesitation. I often think silence behaves like a tiny crack in a dam. At first, nothing seems wrong. Everything, looks fine, stable. Then another crack appears, then another. Eventually, people will ask, when did everything collapse? Or how did all this happen? Rarely overnight, right? It began with something too small to notice, or too small that we chose to ignore, too uncomfortable to acknowledge, right? Maybe the harder question isn't, why didn't Bhishma speak? Maybe it's, where am I quietly watching something that my heart already knows that it is wrong? It could be like perhaps someone in your family, someone in your team, someone in your neighborhood, or your own inner voice. How many times have you ignored your own discomfort? Stayed in situations longer than necessary, accepted words that hurt? I wouldn't say that in the past tense. I would say accepting words that hurt. Smiled while shrinking inside. The silence which we offer others begins with the silence we keep within ourselves. But wait, this isn't an invitation to argue with everyone. Not every disagreement deserves a battle. Not every opinion deserves a response. Wisdom also knows that when, what is that, restraint? The question is different. When silence protects peace, Um it serves, right? Absolutely. And what if silence protects fear? It slowly begins to serve something else. Bhishma's life reminds me that goodness alone isn't always good. Wisdom alone isn't always enough. Even honor, yes, even honor sometimes reaches crossroads. Because there comes a moment when life quietly asks, will you merely witness? Or will you participate? And participation isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a sentence. I don't think that's right. I don't think what you're doing is going to be right. I feel what you just spoke about is wrong. Think about it. Hmm. Something like these words strung together, put together to form that sentence that will be actually impactful. Sometimes it is standing beside someone. Sometimes it is asking, are you okay? Sometimes it is refusing to laugh. Small actions, quiet courage, ordinary moments. History is rarely, built only by those who speak loudly. Sometimes it changes because one person chose not to remain silent also. As you finish your coffee today, oh, my favorite way of telling, as you finish your coffee today, I leave you with this question. Where has your silence been protecting peace? And where has it quietly become a participation? Until tomorrow or until next episode, this is Meera Maya Katha inviting you to look beyond reactions through storytelling because every story from the Mahabharata still whispers something about the stories we continue to live. See you again in the next episode on 21 Days, 21 Stories from the Mahabharata on Copy and Conversation with me, Meera here. Thank you. Namaste.